Hello friends, it's me Mr. Glenn, and today I'm going to tell you a special story. It is called Paul Bunyan and the Giant Mosquitoes. Now I'm not going to tell the story, but I'm going to get my friend to do it, so hang on one second. Howdy, y'all. I'm Sourdough Sam, and I'm here to tell you the story of Paul Bunyan and the giant mosquitoes. See, I worked with Paul Bunyan when he was building the big city of Chicago, you see, and, well, I was Paul Bunyan's cook. Now, being Paul Bunyan's cook is not like being a cook for your mom and dad. See, Paul Bunyan, well, he was gigantic. His shoulders, they went up to the clouds. His head could see above the clouds. And when he took his walks, his big steps, well, he'd create lakes. When he took a stick and dragged it through the ground, well, he'd create big old rivers. Now, Paul Bunyan, he was really, really essential in helping us build the city of Chicago. So he could take out a whole forest with one swing of his axe. And we used that wood to build all them buildings. And this was a really long time ago. See, this was before we had cars and stuff. And in order to get all that wood to the big city, we had to use wagons pulled by oxen. Now, oxen is plural for ox, okay? So an ox is like a big cow, but stronger and smarter. So this has to do with them oxen. And each morning, Paul Bunyan would wake up. He'd walk down to the kitchen where we'd be preparing his favorite meal, pancakes. But since Paul Bunyan was so big, we had to do special things. Like we had to put big shoes of butter on our feet and then go sliding across a big griddle, a big pan to grease it. Then we'd have a crane take giant buckets of batter and dump it in. And we need a whole man crew with a giant spatula to flip that pancake and make a big stack taller than your house to feed Paul Bunyan. And he'd sit down in his big old chair. When he'd look down at me and say, "Hello, Sam," I'd say, "Hello, Paul." And he'd take his big fork, eat the pancakes in one bite. Well, one morning, while we was building the city of Chicago, Paul Bunyan came on down to get his breakfast, and he said, "Hello, Sam." I said, "Hello, Paul." And just as he was about to bite into the big stack of flapjacks, we heard a knock on the door. "Paul, Paul, Paul!" It was Screaming Sid, the foreman, the guy in charge of building the city of Chicago. And he said, "We got a problem, Paul. Oh my gosh, we got a problem. You have to see, Listen, follow me. Oh my gosh, you have to see." Screaming Sid, he likes to scream. That's why he's called Screaming Sid. But Paul knew something was up. So he followed Screaming Sid down to where all the oxen were living. Now oxen, they need a big field. They like to eat grass and stuff, so they are in a big field, just like cows are, okay? And Paul looked out in the field, and Sid pointed and said, "Look over there!" And he saw, far in the distance, 4 legs sticking up straight into the sky. And Paul walked over with his big feet, and he picked it up. And what'd he see? Well, it was an oxen, except it was dead. And all the blood had been sucked out of it. My, this is very, very strange. Poor little guy. And so he opened his pocket, put the oxen inside, and walked away. Now see, that was just one oxen. I mean, sometimes it's sad, but they die. But so Paul wasn't going to worry too much about that. So, the next day, Paul does his work, and the next day he walks into my kitchen, and he's sitting down, getting ready for breakfast. All right, I can't wait to eat those flapjacks. And then another knock on the door. "Paul, Paul, my gosh, it happened again, oh my gosh!" And sure enough, when Paul got to that field, this time he saw not 1, but 2 sets of legs sticking straight up in the air. Paul walked over, picked them up, put them in his pocket, and went back to work. And every day that week, "Paul!" you'd hear a scream at the door. And every day he'd go down that field, and a couple more of them oxen ended up dead. After a week that had gone by, Paul was sick and tired of seeing dead oxen. He loves those animals. He loves his oxen. He even has a pet ox named Babe, but that's another story. And where was I? Oh yeah, he went down and he decided he was going to stake it out. He was going to see what was going on. He was going to stay up all night long and find out what was getting them oxen. So he sat up on a hill, moved the trees out of the way, and he waited. Waited all night. Till in the morning he started to hear a strange sound. It started off very small, very, very far away, but it got louder and louder. And he looked up and he saw in the air a giant mosquito. A giant mosquito. Its wings were 20 feet wide and it had a 10-foot long proboscis sticking out. Big old like spike sticking out of it, front of its face, and his eyes were all mean and nasty. And Paul, being what anybody would do if you saw a skeeter above your head, well, he took a big swat at it. But he missed. And instead, he wrecked a whole bunch of houses. Knocked them straight down. Oops. Oh. Oops. And then the skeeter went, sucked an oxen, and flew away. And Paul thought, well, that just won't do, that just won't do. And so, Paul, being an American, he got an idea. You know, when Americans want to solve something, they get an idea in their head and they invent something to fix it. So, what he did is he took a big pine tree and he knocked all the branches off. And he took a small little sapling, a smaller tree, and then he bent it around the top of the pine tree. And before he knew it, you had a mondo-sized fly swatter, skeeter swatter. So Paul waited again on the hill that night. And then in the morning, here it comes. Them evil skeeter. And Paul said, I'm going to get you, you evil skeeter. And he stood up and he took a swing at the mosquito in the air. What do you think? He got it? No, he missed again. This time, he destroyed the meat house, the meat smoking house, where the workers would make their beef jerky. Flattened it in one swipe. And then that skeeter flew over his head, found a nice fat oxen, and then flew away. Now that just will not do for Paul Bunyan. So he sat down that night, and he does what he always does when he gets upset and can't figure out a problem. He likes to read the newspaper, because back then that's what people did. They read newspapers. I know you guys got computers nowadays, and you don't really do that so much, but that's what we did back then. So he sat down in his big old chair, took out his gigantic newspaper, and started to read. And then he saw an advertisement in the newspaper, and it read, Giant Australian killer bees for sale. Paul thought, maybe these bees can help me get rid of those nasty mosquitoes. And so in a couple days, a big box arrived at Paul's front door. And he could hear inside. Ooh. And so that night he went up to the hill with that big old box, right, filled with those giant Australia killer bees. And he waited there all night. And then when he started to hear the mosquitoes coming, he jumped up and he took his big crowbar and he opened the box, and out flew the most terrifying killer bees you could ever imagine. They had giant heads, and they were all yellow and black. And instead of a stinger, they had giant Bowie knives as tails. Woo! They were something fierce. And Paul put his hands together. He's like, all right, these killer bees are going to get these mosquitoes. And sure enough, the bees, they flew out to meet the mosquitoes out there who were coming to suck the blood of those cattle. But something happened that Paul didn't expect. The mosquitoes and the bees, they met. Oh no, oh no, Paul said. They're falling in love. Oh! And so they flew away together. The mosquitoes and the Australian killer bees, they flew off and they left. And Paul thought, oh no, I didn't stop them. They're going to come back tomorrow. They're going to suck the blood out of those poor, poor oxen. Oh, I can't stand it. What am I going to do? But guess what? The next day, those mosquitoes didn't show up. No sign of them. Yeah. And they didn't lose no oxen. There were plenty of oxen. None of them were dead. And they worked hard all day, came back, ate grass. Everything was fine. Paul was happy in the morning. He ate his pancakes, and everything was good. And then, after a couple weeks of this went by, or everything was just peach keen, Paul was sitting down one morning, and then he heard a knock on the door. Paul, oh my gosh, Paul, you have to come now, oh my gosh! It was Screaming Sid back. And Paul rushed down to where the oxen were, and he saw a terrible sight. Oh no. Oh no. Well, they had babies. Those skeeters and those killer bees had multiplied, and now there were mosquitoes, but they had big old Bowie knives as tails, and they were something fierce, and they were all like yellow and black, and all of a sudden this big old swarm of them descended upon the oxen and started sucking up the blood left and right. Paul tried to stop them. Paul tried, but to no avail. And before the end of the morning, well, there were only a few of those oxen left, maybe like 10. And that herd was what it used to be, like 1,000 of them. Oh, this made Paul very, very sad. You know what he does when he gets sad? Yep, you guessed it. He went and read his newspaper. So he sat down that night, almost crying, on the verge of tears. He started going through that newspaper. And he saw an advertisement. It said, 10,000 gallons of the finest Louisiana molasses on sale. Now, molasses, that's kind of like honey, okay? It's really sticky, and insects really like it, you know? And so Paul got an idea, and he ordered that molasses. And it came up the river on a big paddle boat. And then it sat in the middle of the Mississippi River, ready for Paul to take. So Paul took those last few oxen, he took about 10 of them, and he put them right beside the boat on the river, on the other side of the river, near the boat. And that was Paul's plan. He waited. And he waited there all night. And then in the morning, he heard the terrible sound. They were coming for those last few oxen. Those oxen looked up. But before they could feast upon their delicious blood, they smelled something sweet. And they looked down. They saw all that molasses. That delicious molasses. And one by one, they went down to the boat and started sucking it up till they were all super, super fat. And that's when Paul came in. He looked down at the boat with all them fat skeeters, and they looked back up at him and they tried to fly away, but their bellies were too full of that sticky molasses to do anything. So Paul reached down, he grabbed the boat with one hand, And he looked at them, gave them a stern look. Then he leaned back, and he threw the boat, and it soared into the clouds, way over Mississippi, Louisiana, out into the Gulf of Mexico, out into the ocean, where it splashed down and sunk straight to the dark, dark bottom. And those mosquitoes were never seen again. Nope. And we ended up building that big city of Chicago with plenty of oxen. Alright, I'm going to go get your teacher real quick. I'm going to get Mr. Glenn back. Mr. Glenn! Mr. Glenn, time to come back. Oh, is you done? Done with the story? Yeah, I'm done. Oh, okay. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed that story. My special friend came and told it for you. What's his name? Sourdough Sam, yeah. I hope you have a great weekend and keep having fun. I'll see you.